Good morning. This is Faith in Our Hometown, brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin. And now, here is your host, Father Jay Friedel.
Well, good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us on this Easter morning for Faith in Our Hometown. If you've not been greeted by any other Christian this morning with a happy Easter, I hope we're going to make sure that Easter at least is something that's on your radar screen this morning. Easter for Christians is the biggest feast day of the year because without Easter, well, everything else that we celebrate or think about really doesn't make much sense. Or according to Paul, if Christ is not risen, your faith is vain. My guest this morning is going to be Reverend Andrew Moyer. Andrew is the pastor of the Light, and we're going to be here to talk a little bit about Easter, the Light, all those good things, if you'll stick with us for another Sunday morning here at Faith in Our Hometown. So hopefully you'll grab a hot cross bun or an Easter egg or something, but stick with us. We're going to be right back to talk a little bit about Easter this morning for Faith in Our Hometown. We'll be right back after this Mercy Minute.
I've had mammograms on the bus probably 12 to 15 times. It has been a lifesaver for me.
The quality of the reading is exactly the same. I will go back home tonight, download these images into the same computer system that the other images that they've been taking at the clinic today, and they'll all be read.
The earlier the better. Don't wait, don't put it off. Get started and do it every year.
Again, thanks for joining us on this Easter morning. The old traditional thing was, Christ is risen. Christ is risen, as he said. And we'd join each other in a ritual greeting that said, "He is risen indeed."
Amen.
Yep. Amen.
He's risen
so
indeed.
My guest this morning, Reverend Andrew Moyer. Andrew is the pastor over at the Light. So Andrew, first tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us a little bit about the Light, and then let's talk about Easter.
I think it's so interesting because most people don't call me Reverend, except for like newspapers, and so
This
feel
is
so
a very official news
This
show.
is official. So my wife and I moved to Joplin 3 years ago. We really were discerning what God had for us next, and we knew that we were called to be the light wherever we went. We had no clue that that was supposed to be the name of a church or anything like that, and so
you didn't name it.
I mean, technically God did, but yes,
Okay, all right.
we were in the midst of it, and they're like, "What should we call it?" And we're like, "I don't know.
I love it.
How about this?" And we're like, "Oh, Life Changers, Lifeline." No, just stop and just keep it simple. You are the light. Yeah, and I think it's cool because that's one of the names that Jesus used for himself and us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so I love that we can be his image bearer in that way. So it's important to us.
So you came here 3 years ago, and did you start this church new? Is this a...
Yeah, no.
Okay.
So basically there was a church in this building, St. James United Methodist Church, and they had closed. And so they said, "Hey, if you'd like to use our building, we'll give it to you free." And they had already kind of dissipated. So I don't even know a lot of the people that were in that church. They were so faithful to leave a legacy that they gave us a building for free, and we started small groups throughout the city was how it started, and those small groups grew into people saying, "We want to have church on Sunday," and we're like, "All right, sweet, let's get going." So that's kind of how it went.
Now later today, you told me later today you're going to have a big service down at Memorial, right?
At 10 a.m. this morning, we're going to have awesome service at Memorial Hall, and I'm excited. I don't want to ruin it for everyone, but we will have a worship leader that's kind of famous. And so he's kind of known all over the country. And so we're really excited about that. He's actually not known for being a worship leader. He's known for a few other things.
Well,
but isn't that it's kind of exciting news.
I will be right down a block from you, you know, at the same time. You guys are going to start at 10, and you know, of course we got one at 9, so I'll be ending up when you start, and then we'll be like winding up again for 11:15.
Awesome.
But
winding up.
winding up for
winding up.
no, just winding up for another
gotcha.
run.
All right, fair.
And then again, we've got an evening service too on Sunday nights, so it's 6 p.m. So yeah, so
That's
we're,
awesome.
but again, celebrating this great feast that we have of Easter,
Amen.
So you don't know, so you don't have to give a lot of things away. But what typically are your Easters like? I mean, what are you going to focus on today?
Well, here's the thing: the key is really community building. Every Resurrection Sunday, that's why we leave our building and we join with actually a couple other churches, and we do an ecumenical type service that says, hey, all the community is welcome. We need to experience resurrection. We believe resurrection is important for this city. And the truth is that we have dying people all around us that could use a little resurrection. So we think it's a great thing to leave our buildings, even though it's one of the most heavily visited Sundays, right, at your church. And we want to forego that in order to be in the community, and that's what's important to us.
Which I think is a neat thing. If you're Christian or wanting to hang out with Christians or wanting to do a celebration, I think it's a great place to show up.
Even if you don't want to hang out with Christians,
come on anyway.
Sit far away.
Yep.
Don't touch me.
But I just think it's be a great opportunity if anybody's looking for a place to be this morning. You could certainly do that at Memorial Hall downtown.
Yep.
And again, if you're looking for a more traditional service, we're around the corner. But I'm just going to say this for all the Christian churches.
Amen.
Everybody would be thrilled to celebrate Easter with you if you went out. Now, again, if you're not Christian and that doesn't appeal to you, you're just going to have to listen to us talk about it a little bit this morning. Because we're excited because of the day and because of what we're celebrating today.
Amen. Yeah, absolutely.
Any teasers for perhaps what you're going to be preaching about today?
Well, no, actually, but probably the resurrection. I don't know. I think that's a
that is going to be
giveaway.
The theme. Now, last week, my guest on the show was Aaron Brown over at St. Paul's United Methodist.
Yeah.
Good man.
Good-looking guy, too.
Well, he doesn't hold a candle to the two of us, but it's all right. But we talked a little bit about what leads up to the resurrection. We talked about suffering and the death and the pain, because they're almost like two sides of a coin. You can't really know one without the other. Okay. And so this week we're talking a little bit about the other coin, the other side of the coin. We're talking a little bit about the new life. So again, Aaron stopped me in my tracks last week, as he is wont to do, by looking at me saying, "Tell me the moment of your most, with some of your greatest suffering in your life."
Absolutely.
But so don't do that question. But what I'm going to say is that tell me a little bit about some of the ways that you've experienced new life and the ways that you've learned to see that in your life in Christ.
So I think that only happens like on the breaking point of suffering a lot of times for us. It did for me. I was a non-believer most of my life, and I tell people all the time, they're like, why do you share the story? But the truth is, when I became a Christian, I became the most depressed that I ever remember being. And let me explain.
Did you say oppressed or depressed?
Depressed.
Okay,
no,
all right.
not oppressed. But
you should have become a Catholic. That would have oppressed you. But go ahead. So depressed.
Well,
all right.
And here's the thing. I realized for the first time that everything I'd worked for, everything I had, everything I obtained, all the relationships that I had worked for, it just didn't mean anything to me anymore in a weird way. I realized that I had used people, that I had used stuff for happiness, and whenever that clicks over and none of that makes you happy anymore, you're going, what in the world am I alive for?
What am I doing?
Yes, what is the point of any of this? And I remember having this revelation of like, and now you lay all of that at the feet of Jesus. And you come to this realization that whenever you unload all the stuff in your life onto God, He literally resurrects you with a purpose. And that's what I was looking for all along, was what is my purpose? So I think the resurrection moment for me was going, you're not an accident. You don't need to create a purpose anymore, because you were created intentionally, and I have something for you. And there is nothing more uplifting in a person's life than realizing you have a purpose. So I think that, coupled with the fact that I just walked around trying to be thankful for everything. I mean, I literally was like driving down the road like, thank you for my gas and my car and my tires. And in the morning I was like, thank you for toothpaste. And my wife was like, I'm gonna punch you. But that perspective.
Reason 6,987 for celibacy. I'm just going to say it right now, but go ahead. Yes. All right.
But it was just being thankful and realizing you have a purpose, and that was so resurrecting to me that I realized that purpose was a piece of the eternal me, and I got to start embracing the eternal me. I think the other piece for us as Christians, though, is realizing that you're free. And really, Jesus' blood on the cross is also a callback, if you will, right, to the Israelites being freed.
Yep.
And so I ask this to Christians all the time is, are you more free? Because if you're not, you could be mistaking what Christianity is about. Because I think this question of oppression is kind of interesting, because I find that most Christians find themselves oppressed. And it's interesting because I believe that Jesus came for freedom. And I'm not saying we always experience that, right? But why not live a life of freedom? And I think that's the thing that we mistake oftentimes with non-Christians is we always assume that Christians are less free, and people who have no faith are actually totally free. But I would challenge people that it's been quite the opposite for me in my life.
One of the things I always yammer at the people at St. Peter's about, God love them for putting up with me for these 12 and a half years. But one of the things I always am going on to them about is, if we're going to be this church that's named for Peter, then we have to do what Jesus told Peter to do. And he told him, to loose chains. I mean, I think that the second part of that question, was, whatever you bind will be bound on earth. Whatever you free is going to be freed in heaven the same way. And so I keep saying to people, do you really think for a minute that he meant us to really chain people down? I mean, really? Do you think that that's what he meant? I think he was using stylized language to say to us, your job is the same way I let you go free.
Amen.
Your job is to let everybody else go free. And how do we unloose, how do we unchain all that stuff that's keeping everybody stuck?
Amen.
And how do we, in some ways, unlock that for them? As you come to St. Peter's, just the keys everywhere, okay? I've given you the keys to the kingdom of heaven. So you got keys everywhere. How do we use those keys to unlock everybody into new life?
Yeah.
And again, I can't think of a better way to think about Easter other than to say, how do we unlock those chains? Or again, to use some of the words from our hymns, Jesus Christ broke the chains of death and rose triumphant from the grave. I've been quoting, we got this great song, this great Easter song that we sing in the darkness as the light is spread on the Easter Vigil. So on Saturday night, last night. So last night we do that. We spread that, and we're singing in the light, and I'm singing, this is the night that Jesus Christ broke the chains of death and rose triumphant from the grave. And what good would life have been to us had Christ not come as our Redeemer? And so, I mean, that's just, it's like, wow. So, I mean, those are the messages that I hope that everybody who believes in Jesus is sharing with everybody today.
Right.
And again, but if you're not wrapped up anywhere else and you want someplace to be, go on down to Memorial. If you want to watch everybody else do it in a little bit more of a stylized fashion, then that'd be us. Okay.
You can do whatever you want at Memorial Hall.
Exactly.
But check his church out. It's going to be awesome.
It's all going to be good.
Yeah.
And again, they're just our ways of celebrating the stuff that's important to us.
Yes.
And that's that business of saying, when you really figured out what was of worth to you, how is the Lord going to, suddenly bring you into a whole new thing? Because it is. Once you put on those lenses and start looking through that, once you start looking at the lens of life through the resurrection, it is. I mean, it's a life-changing experience.
Yeah.
We're gonna be right back after this Mercy Minute. I'm sorry, no, this is our short break. Never mind. Skip the Mercy Minute. We're gonna do that at the end. Okay. We're gonna be right back after a quick break. My guest this morning is Andrew Moyer, who is the pastor of the Light. And we're going to tell you where that is during the next segment too, because we never got that, and I just realized that. So stick around. We're going to be right back after a quick break.
You're watching Faith in Our Hometown on KSN TV, brought to you as a community service of Mercy Hospital, Joplin.
Well, again, thanks for being with us on this Easter Sunday morning, and I am very honored that you're spending part of this day with us. I hope you've got wonderful plans for the day. Special dinner with family, friends, whatever. But I hope your day is filled with much joy. My guest this morning, Andrew Moyer, who's the pastor of the Light, and we're talking a little bit this morning about Easter, about death and resurrection. As a preacher, do you struggle with talking about death and resurrection? Is that some people hate it and other people love it. So I'm just wondering, where are you?
It's definitely harder to talk about death than resurrection, right? But
that's okay. Aaron and I covered a lot of that last week.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? And paying taxes. No.
That's coming up soon too.
Yeah, it's that next episode.
Oh, no, that was actually last week.
Pentecost
So yeah,
Sunday.
if you haven't filed your taxes already, you're late. Okay? All right.
No, but I don't think it's difficult because I think it's part of our MO as Christians, right? It's the way we operate, because I find it unfortunate whenever we focus on the cross and not give any attention to the resurrection. Because the cross, what's the purpose in the cross without resurrection? Because what's the point in forgiveness without risen?
Yeah.
Like, you're forgiven and dead.
Yeah.
That's a pretty boring story, right?
Well, and who'd want to join? That's not a very good slogan if you want people to come and join. I'm going to say. It's not a very good story if you want people to come and join. You know, it's just
Come to our church. We don't believe in the resurrection.
Yeah, we don't. We just believe in the death. Okay?
But you're forgiven. Go in peace.
Well, yeah, that's going to, yeah. I just think, in terms of the way that we embody that, and I think you said it well, we need to continue to remember. And, sometimes I think we need to challenge. That's a challenge to us as Christians. I sometimes say, we're supposed to be this people who believe in new life and resurrection and Easter, and sometimes you really can't tell it on our faces very well.
Yeah. That's true.
And it's just like, I always ask sometimes, my own congregation is just like, if people came in here and looked at our faces while we were praying, would they really want to be here?
Yeah.
Now I don't mind some looks of, rapture. I don't mind the looks of peace. I mean, you don't have to smile all the time.
Right.
But I'm saying if we always look like we don't understand the other half of that coin of the resurrection, how appealing is that to people?
That's a good question. So that's a good question. And I think it's important to understand then too, like, how do we operate as people, as Christians, who can say, like, what are you really afraid of if you're not afraid of even death itself? And I think that's an important question as we go through our day is, well, what will I face today? And how can I face it with the understanding of the resurrection, the understanding of the power of God in resurrection?
It's interesting. This is only going to make some sense to some of you who were listening to us last week. But, I always say, death doesn't really bother me. Death doesn't scare me because of my belief in living forever. Death doesn't scare me. What really scares me is suffering.
Yeah.
If I can just go in my sleep, that'd be fine, God,
Yeah.
But I think that from time to time, we just have to acknowledge the fact that, we ride this ride of life as humanity. And I really feel confident about the forever. I feel really confident about the resurrection. I know it's not going to be, and I know I'll never get stuck in the suffering, but I'd rather not do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, what's real if I don't experience it from time to time?
It's absolutely true. I used to tell people, it's interesting because I spent most of my life as an atheist. I've been a Christian actually.
I've been waiting to see how we were going to get into this.
A short time, but what I thought was interesting was I was asking this question: why does heaven matter? When I was a non-Christian, I said, it doesn't sound that great to me, because would you not go numb? I mean, I was asking the question, is heaven any worse than hell? I mean, given most descriptions that Christians were giving me, I thought, well, if this just sucks forever, then I'm sorry if I'm not supposed to say that word. If this is just painful forever, then is it even recognizably more painful every day? Does it get more exponentially painful? And what about heaven? Does it get better every day? Is that relative to me anymore? If it gets exponentially better, do I even notice it anymore? Or is it just the same day in, day out? And so as a non-Christian, I was like, what is the point of either thing? What is the point? Why would I want to go to your heaven? And but I realized two things. One, that time in chronological order was no longer important in eternity. And I was doing a graph of pleasure and time, and I was saying, okay, if this time goes on this way, does it get better? Whatever. But now time's irrelevant. Right? Chronologically in eternity. And I realized that my argument was no longer valid. And so I had to ask more questions about what truly is heaven and what would be hell, And I started to come to conclusions that it was really more about life with or without God. Right? Yeah. It was the idea or understanding in relationship. And I realized that, whoa.
And see that, and that'd be the way that I frame it. I think we're called to live in the resurrection now.
Yes.
It's not just something that's going to be in the. So I really don't preach very often about what heaven's going to be like, because number one, I haven't been there.
Right.
Number two, I'm, Jesus kept saying to us over and over and over again, the kingdom of heaven is here. It's right now.
Amen.
Kingdom of heaven is at hand. Yeah, it's right here. It's right now. And I guess, I know eternity is going to be eternity, but I guess I'm really more, and I know I'm going to get there someday, but I'm more interested in how I'm living in the resurrection now.
Yeah.
How do I experience more light in the midst of the darkness? Because there's plenty of darkness in this world.
Yeah.
But how do I experience more light in the midst of all that? How do I experience more joy in the midst of my suffering, my sorrow, all of those things? How can I do that here and now? How do I experience that here and now? And how do I experience more life even in the midst of the death that surrounds us? Because I really believe we live in a culture that embraces death at so many turns.
Yeah.
And how do we become a voice that speaks to life and light, as you would say it? How do we do that? And so I'm always more interested in the way that it's going to play itself out, in the living here and now, rather than what we're going to do down the road. Because again, I can't say much about that.
Yeah. Well, and I think here's another thing that I realized is in my faith or in my belief, I believe that you have never lived a day without experiencing, maybe I shouldn't say experiencing, without God loving you. Mm-hmm. You've never breathed the breath that he didn't give you, that he didn't cherish with you, even when you didn't know him, even when you weren't walking with him, and so I ask people all the time, they're like, well, why didn't I have this faith experience? Well, is it possible that you've never had a moment of your life that wasn't you weren't God's blessed, loved child?
I like to smack college students upside the head once in a while with that same thing by saying, your parents never really wanted you. They didn't know who they wanted. They didn't know what was possible.
But God did.
They wanted something. They wanted something. They wanted a child.
They wanted something.
Exactly. But
Listen,
but the
God
bottom
had a purpose for you, even if your parents didn't.
Yeah, there you go. But I'm just saying, my college students are like, what do you mean? He never wanted me. Yeah, he didn't want you. God's the only one that knew what you were going to be. Mm-hmm. And again, that's where we get by with that little trapdoor thing of saying, that's why God's supposed to be able to know everything, is because like heaven, God is outside of time and outside of space and outside of all those things, which is fairly interesting from a philosophical viewpoint. But on this Easter, as we talk and banter a little bit this morning about the signs of new life, what's been your biggest one in this last year, since last Easter? What's been your biggest sign of new life?
Oh, man. So I've gone through seasons in the last year. And so I've had personal signs of new life, whether it's in my marriage or in relationships with friends and all of those things. But I would say most of all is like just now, because we're 2 years and a couple months into the church starting, is we're just now seeing people that have kind of gone through this measure of discipleship that went from, you would never guess meeting them 2 years ago that they were going to be a leader of a program or leading other people as disciples or getting their family back. I think I wouldn't label, this one thing, but I think just we're starting to see this this snowball effect, right? Just start to roll downhill, and you start to see this person, this family that are now off drugs, getting their kids out of the system, working full time, getting off government assistance. Now they're providing for their family. They're sitting around the table with their kids, and when we met them, they were homeless. There's no better thing than that. And then I think the best part for us as leaders is when you see your disciples make disciples. Yeah. Whenever you see your disciples turn around and it's like, and they're better at this than I am. Whenever you see a disciple, a person you've really poured into, get a double portion of whatever you have, and you go, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
And it also makes you think maybe I should retire because they're better than me. But there's this other piece of understanding how beautiful it is, this multiplication lineage, and seeing resurrection, multiple generations. And I don't know, here's a fascinating thing to me. It was one of my first thoughts as a Christian is, we could trace our faith back to people that heard the message of the gospel from Jesus himself. Isn't that, I don't know why, that's just the most beautiful thing about sharing the gospel to me is like Jesus told Peter, Peter told this person told this person, all the way up to you
and me. And all these people that are coming after us, which is a phenomenal thing.
Isn't that crazy though?
Yeah. You know, and again, and that's what our kids, that's what our friends and neighbors, that's what I think everybody needs to see from us as we're this Easter Sunday, is the fact that he's you know, when I says, well, how do you know he's still alive? Well, he's living here. He's living in me. The story's still real. The story's still coming true. The story's still being lived out. I mean, this was not just an event that happened 2,000 years ago, but it's still happening, you know, in the right here and now, which is an amazing thing. So again, my guest this morning, Reverend, I'm going to call you that one more time since you like it so well. The Reverend Andrew Moyer, who is the pastor of the Light. And we've been talking this morning about Easter and the way that those things kind of affect our lives. So we are going to be right back now after this Mercy Minute, so stick around.
Blessings and greetings of mercy to you. My name is Anna Nicholson. I am a Sister of Mercy and currently the leader of Heritage and Spirituality at Mercy International Association. I love the fact that sisters throughout time have gone where they have been called to go, and they have often picked up ministries that they never intended to pick up. 25 years ago, there were 22,000 Sisters of Mercy globally. Today we're down to about 6,200 with Sister Rock and some of the others. But despite the fact there are 6,500 or 6,200 sisters left, there is an amazing number of women and men of mercy who are working alongside us, and that continues to expand, and for me that is incredibly exciting. So as far as National Catholic Sisters Week, I really look at the legacy that they have passed on and the fact that so many women, men, young people are living mercy today. That really is for me what's significant.
Well, again, everyone, thanks for giving up some of your Easter morning to spend some time with us here, talking about a mystery that for Christians continues to be the core of what we celebrate in faith. And that is the mystery that God's love transformed even death into something new, into life. I sometimes when people get upset with me when I take this tack, but it's just like, who might have been the most surprised person on Easter morning? Probably wasn't the centurion or the guard. Might have been Jesus himself, who was suddenly experiencing himself alive after dying, said, oh, now I understand. Now I get it. Now I see what you had planned. And I don't know what that means for his godness and its humanness, but I still sometimes wonder. I hope we have some of that wonder for ourselves this morning as people who might believe in the resurrection still. Again, not a story that happened 2,000 years ago, but one that continues to happen, at least for those of us who bear the name of Christ in this day and age. To all of our non-Christian brothers and sisters, thank you for letting us share our Easter with you. It's certainly a privilege. We hope that you'll come back and join us again next Sunday for Faith in Our Hometown. Happy Easter.
Thanks for watching. Faith in Our Hometown can be seen Sunday mornings at 6:30 and 9 a.m. on KSN. Brought to you as a community service and sponsored by Mercy Hospital, Joplin.